Hello.
Hey, lovely.
Oh, Mel, it is so good to see you, beautiful.
Oh
What a
my
joy.
gosh.
I wish we were actually face to face, but I'm giving you a hug
Same.
from here.
I'm so glad we're doing this together. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thanks for doing it.
Oh, it is my greatest pleasure and joy. And I think just before we begin, what I'd
Yep.
like to do is acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we find ourselves and to pay respects to their elders past, present, and emerging, and extend that welcome to any First Nations people who are watching us today. And of course, what is bringing us together, Mel, is your incredible book, 15 Seconds of Brave. And I've got it here. I ordered it through Booktopia.
Oh, you're the
And
best.
congratulations. It is such a beautiful read. And for me, it's like a hug in the sense of it's reassuring, it's inspiring, it's moving, and
It's
it's the
really
stuff
quiet.
of life. No, but congratulations, because
You.
it's it's what we all need.
And that's exactly why I wrote it. I was the same. I felt we needed to hear great stories of incredible people who had overcome challenges, but real stories. You know, we've all been through so many changes, challenges, things moving in the last couple of years and you know, to varying degrees. And I don't know about you, but I get to a point where hearing those lovely, pretty, inspirational calendars where there's, you know, pictures of puppy dogs running through fields of daisies, as cute as they are, it kind of just doesn't cut it. And I just thought we need to hear really strong stories of heart and bravery and people who've really rebuilt their lives and what they can teach us, what we can all take away from their experiences and their wisdom. So yeah, sat down and I was really lucky that I just had this incredible collection of people whose stories I'd carefully kept in my little hand until the time was right. And this just felt like the right time. So it all came together.
And it has come together so beautifully. Tell me about that writing process, because at the start of the book you talk about how you wrote it at a time in your life when you were sort of, you were 50, your beautiful son was about to sort of fly the coop and
Yeah.
head overseas, and you were at a bit of a crossroads. And I think it's interesting, isn't it, sometimes in our
Yeah.
lives when everything sort of lines up and starts to head us in a particular direction, and that yours was very much, I need to be sharing these stories with people.
Yeah, I felt like I wrote the stories I wanted to read. And yes, things were changing for me in 2020, just like everybody else. You know, as you know, we approach those milestone birthdays and everyone just asks you how you feel about it. And even if you hadn't thought about it, suddenly you have to. Work was changing. Our, you know, big boy was leaving home and moving overseas. It just felt like there was so much happening. And then, of course, throw into the mix a global pandemic. And it just was, there was so much change going on. And so, as we do, we look to people who have been through experiences and what they can teach us. And, you know, it's interesting. I started to write a book about change and acceptance and all of those things. And then I just thought it needed to have more heart. It needed to be deeper. They needed to be bigger stories. I wanted them to be substantial, not sort of, you know, flick over the surface of it, but really get to the heart of what happens when your whole life is thrown off course. What do you do? How do you bring it back to basics, and how do you go forward from there?
And that is what I think is so phenomenal about this book, is the collection of stories. They're all very different, and the sorts of circumstances and situations that the people find themselves in is actually quite mind-boggling at times.
Yeah.
But the bravery and courage, that seems to be a unifying theme, that all of them have come through, and with grace. And I was reading Julie's story earlier today, and she talks about different moments of grace that came to her. And that really sat with me in quite a beautiful way. I love that turn of phrase.
And her line, I love where she says, I had to be the hero in my own story. Julie was battling alcohol addiction. I've known Julie for many, many years, and I had no idea, which first of all makes me feel ashamed. But she put a post up on her socials finally admitting and saying she was an alcoholic, and she was giving up alcohol and you know, needing support of all of those around her. And she talks about how tough the road was, how difficult life was to change all those things. And you know, she talks about the basic simple things like who was she when she was no longer the fun party girl with a few drinks under her belt. You know, suddenly she had to look at herself differently. She had to find her new sense of self. And she says as much as she loved her husband, as much as she loved her children, she had to do it for her. And I think that messaging can be applied in so many circumstances. You know, all of these stories, as you said, are really different. And I tried to ensure that they were quite broad in their scope. But I think through so much of it, the messaging from these incredible people is really similar. And many of them say, I had to take ownership. I had to, you know, grab it by the horns and move forward in my own life. And that's exactly what Julie did.
And tell me, because you said at the start that a number of these stories you've known for many years and you've sort of held them close to your heart. How do you manage to do that? Because you've had the most incredible and still do career in journalism. You've interviewed and met so many people throughout your career. What was it about these particular stories that have stuck with you or really resonated with you, Mel?
I assume you're probably a little bit like me, in as much as sometimes when you interview somebody, you can't simply walk away at the end and say farewell and never stay in touch with them again. So there are some people that I call keepers, you know, and I need to know that they're going okay. I like to check in with them and for my own peace of mind, and also just to make sure that, first of all, talking to the media didn't make life harder, but secondly, that they're going okay. So some of them were people that I'd interviewed over the years. Tonya, who is the first subject of the book, I'd interviewed her when I was on Sunday Night many years ago at the peak of her challenge. Her father was murdered, which is horrific for anyone to go through. And then about 3 weeks after the murder, the police knock on her door and tell her that her teenage daughter has been charged with that murder and goes to trial and is found guilty and jailed. So Tonya loses her father. She effectively loses her daughter. In the midst of it all, her marriage broke down. So I interviewed her for a story on Sunday Night, not long after all of this had happened. And she was still very much in that sharp period of anguish and grief. And so I was fascinated to talk to her a few years later, primarily to check up and see how she was doing, but also what she'd learnt and what she could share with us with the benefit of hindsight. What helped her get through something so horrific and tough, and what did she see as helpful that maybe she could pass on to other people. So she came along to one of our events in Queensland last week. She's amazing. She's glowing with health and happiness, and she's an incredible woman, and she's so brave in her honesty in talking about it. She talks about hitting rock bottom. You know, she talks about things like her therapist reminding her, get out of bed and get out of your pajamas and have a shower and make sure you eat and make sure you go outside and get some fresh air. And, you know, they're the really basic things that I think sometimes we gloss over, that messy middle bit when people are going through things. You know, we find out what happened at the beginning, and often we fast forward to the end, but we don't always, I don't think, spend enough time talking about that really heavy middle bit. And I worry that sometimes people think that everybody else must skip through that and they're the only ones that are taking their time. So Tonya's really honest in talking about how tough that was. So yeah, it was lovely to catch up with her again and see how she's doing. And she's just one keeper.
Oh, she is. And that point that you said about, and I thought it was great advice, where she did say that essentially, how did she get through those days? Get up, brush your teeth, have a shower. And it is as simple as that sometimes for people, just to put one foot in front of the other and just to take those little steps, and the incredible, I think, bravery that it takes people to do that. And as you say, we don't spend enough time, I think, thinking about that enough, or even just giving people that advice, just those small things, as opposed to you've got to change everything and do all these things differently. Just take these small little steps. And the other thing that I thought was so beautiful about her was how she reaches out to people when she sees people who are going through tough times and things. She'll just reach out and say, hey, I hope you're okay and you're going to get through this. And I think that's real generosity of spirit. What a big heart that she has.
She says in the beginning she would be sitting on a park bench and people would walk past looking happy, and she'd think to herself, you've got no idea what I'm going through. And so now she reverses it, and she sees someone else sitting on a park bench, and she naturally thinks, well, I've got no idea what you're going through. And so she feels that she just has this actual understanding and empathy that if, you know, particularly if she sees something on the news and someone's been through something horrific, she'll reach out to them because she can understand in a way that many people can't. And I think if you're going to take advice from anyone, I'd probably be listening to someone who'd been through something, who'd been there, who actually knew what it felt like and all of those emotions. So yeah, she's really honest. And the other thing I love, she talks about, she had to rediscover herself because suddenly she said, who am I without being a mother, a wife, a daughter? And who is the Tonya? So she took herself back to a time in her youth when she was first discovering who she was. So she used to play all of her favorite songs. You know, she had John Stevens and Cold Chisel on repeat and all those songs that she rocked out to in the 80s. And she said that they took her mentally back to that time when she was, you know, finding herself. And that was a really big part of her rebuilding process. So I love it that she just broke it down for us, that hopefully somebody reading it can take a little tiny bit of her story or someone else's and think, wow, if that helped them, maybe I can try it.
And that's the thing, there are life lessons for everyone in this wonderful book. And please, people, I know we've got lots of people listening. I've got to put my glasses on, Mel, because I cannot read the questions that are coming.
I've got them
through.
here. Mine are ready to go as well. Look at us.
But I know lots of people are joining us, which is so lovely. But I think, you know, you can order this book through booktopia.com.au. It's a beautiful present for Chrissy, for people. And it's full of life lessons. So, you know, the particular people that have bravely shared their story with you and then you've shared them with us, because yes, they are very varied, but there's incredible things that we can take from that. And I think all of us are looking for a bit of a toolkit to get through this crazy thing called life and all those different sort of stages that we're at in our life. And so very much in this beautiful book, there is something for everyone. And one thing I'd love, Mel, to pick up on, you know, you mentioned how Tonya has such a big heart. You are also someone who has a big heart, because I want to share with people who are listening how you and I first met. And I've got a picture here.
Oh my gosh, I thought you might. Hang on, now I'm going to put my glasses on. Oh my gosh, look at us.
So there we are. I'm in the yellow. Mel's there next to me, and we're sitting on a fire truck, and I've got a Dalmatian next to me. And this was 1993 in Canberra, Prime TV in Canberra. It was like a promotional event. And so I first met Mel when I came to Prime Television, and I was the weather girl and Mel was the news presenter. And just as you are now, you have had the biggest heart, and you were so welcoming to me, who was so nervous and anxious about what do I do and how do I do it?
I don't believe you. Will write back at you. You are identical. You look the same. You sound the same. Everyone listening, I've got to tell you, so Jess bounds into this newsroom like this big burst of sunshine and still enters a room like a big burst of sunshine. So yeah, you are just as gorgeous as ever. And I just feel so lucky. We were babies. Wasn't it fun?
I know, and we were, and that is the thing. So, you know, we were 23 years of age, and we used to get so excited because there was a fabulous fashion shop at the time in Canberra called Mondi, and we'd have to go in and get our fabulous, like, news presenter jackets and
shoulder pads,
big shoulder pads,
and
they had to have colour. And I remember also Perry Cutton. You're a bit of a Perry Cutton fan at the time, and it was the shoulder pad, and we'd need colour, but you were so lovely. And I remember too what you would do. I can't remember what night of the week it was, but you'd get everyone around for like a book club or just to chat. And I didn't know anyone, and you'd ask me round, and it was so lovely in your apartment. You'd cook up yummy food. You were a great cook then. I'm sure
we all gathered, didn't we? We all had come from different places. We were all spring chickens. We all arrived in this new city, and no one knew anyone. And we actually really formed some really beautiful, special friendships. It was a wonderful, happy time. I felt like we were learning our craft. We were finding out who we were and where we were going. We were loving our job. We were working crazy hours because we were just so excited to actually be doing it.
Exactly. And to have the chance. And it was such a really fun, almost dare I say, carefree time in a sense, because we didn't have all those other sort of issues of life that was sort of suddenly on our shoulders and things.
Yes. Yeah, we just had to pay the rent on our cheap apartments that mine had no furniture. So I don't know why anyone came to mine.
Yeah, and I remember too, because you had a fabulous laser car and you were very good to zoom around. Cool. And I couldn't drive. Remember, I couldn't drive. I didn't have a license.
That's right.
And then what happened? Then I did my driving lesson on the news cars. Remember the cameraman?
Right. And were they magnets? And they had the, I do remember when we got the phones and we were so fancy, the huge, big, clunky brick in the center near the handbrake. And I was so fancy. I can't believe you did your driving test in one of those. Go you.
And I remember though, them lovely boss 𝒄𝒏𝒅� saying, now, I know you have been spotted driving around camera with the L plates on the news car.
I love it. How to get attention.
I don't know how much of a good look that is. But anyway, I eventually did get my license. But I remember you would often, when you'd be driving back up to Sydney, you'd give me a lift too, because that was, you know, I wasn't driving and you'd give me a lift. So, yeah, so I just think that's so lovely how we first met. And then, you know, we've obviously stayed in touch over the years, and you're just such a special woman, Mel.
I feel like our paths have just kept going like this, haven't they? We've been at different spots, but the number of times we've just kept crossing over, and it's been really nice. I think it's been this lovely parallel journey. So it's lovely to watch someone else, watch you blossom, and know I was there at the beginning, and it's fun. And there's so much more blossoming to do.
Well, exactly. And I think, and with that in mind, with that blossoming, tell me about the writing process for you. It's so different, isn't it? Sort of putting pen to paper or your hands on the keyboard as it is to broadcasting. So what was the writing process? I mean, you had though written a number of other books, but what's it like writing for you?
You realise how much you can rely on with television, don't you? Because you can do an interview with somebody and there's so much you don't have to explain, because obviously the viewer can see what the person looks like, can see where they might be. Sometimes with TV, less is more. So, you know, what they don't say can very often be more powerful than what they do. So suddenly writing a book, I realized I had to fill in all those blanks. I had to describe things and I had to remember to do all of that. But in a way, it was a lot more freeing, because I feel as though some of these stories lent themselves to a book rather than necessarily television, you know, as anyone would work out. But you write a TV script and we need to cover it with pictures. And I think some of these stories probably couldn't have been covered with pictures. You know, I think they need to just sit in your mind, and you need to, you know, use your own imagination. There's a lot of parts of people's stories that I left out for that very reason. But I also think it made, you know, the talent a little more comfortable. You don't have a whopping great big camera and lights and a whole crew sitting there in front. So yeah, it was a really interesting experience for me, just to find another way of storytelling and take my time. I took about 1.5 years to write this book, because a lot of the interviews I did very slowly, very gently. I would probably do, on average, I think, some of them were 3 or 4 different, you know, separate interviews where we would just go gently, you know, particularly Grace, for example. Her story is pretty tough. I feel like I need to warn everybody, you know, it's a pretty heavy book. Some of the stories are pretty heavy, but you know, it's all about hope and inspiration and the human spirit. So I hope that that part outweighs some of the heaviness. But
it does. So tell people who are listening, Mel, just a little bit about Grace, because she was the child soldier, wasn't she?
Yes. 12 years old. She's in Uganda on her way to visit her grandmother, and she's abducted by the Lord's Resistance Army. That was the one run by Joseph Kony. She's married off to Joseph Kony's 2IC, so a warlord 30 years her senior, and forced into child slavery, made to be a child soldier, and obviously then a child bride. And she had 5 years of hell. I can't even imagine what she went through. And, you know, she talks about acceptance, having to accept the situation she's in. She knew she couldn't escape or they would kill her. and she finds herself in this absolute sheer hell until she manages to finally, you know, escape in the dark of night. She was 17 years old and has eventually made her way to Australia, and she's living here now. She's working with severely disabled children through the NDIS, because she just has so much empathy and heart. She's just such an extraordinary woman. But she talks about, I think my favorite part of her story is she talks about the power of her mind today. She couldn't control what happened to her then, but she can control how she deals with it today. Yes, she has dark days. Yes, she has times that are more challenging than others. And often during our interviews, you know, she'd message and say, look, I'm just not up for it this week. I'm not really in a good place. I can't talk about it. So I'd wait until she was ready and comfortable. But she talks about, her line to me is, I choose to be happy. And given what she went through, if she has the power within herself to choose how she feels, I think that's extraordinary. So she's a wonderful, remarkable woman. And I'm going to her wedding in a couple of weeks, more importantly. So super happy for her. She's gorgeous. Yeah. So she's happy. She's glowing. She's just, you know, she is so, I wish I had another word other than inspirational, because I don't want to overuse it, but she truly is. Yeah. A remarkable woman.
That, you saying that you're going to her wedding, that gives me goosebumps.
I can't wait.
What a moment for you, though, to share with her, to see that joy within her life, a life that her early life, there is so much sort of sadness and trauma, but what resilience and courage. And that point that you make about what she said about choosing happiness, I think is a very powerful one. Often in life, some things that happen that are out of our hands. We can't control that. But what we can do is choose how we decide to deal with things. And I mean, she's actually, I think Grace has taken that, though, to the next level in terms of how she's managed to keep on keeping on when so many, I mean, I don't think I could have done it.
No, I don't think I could either. And it's sort of, there's a few threads that go through it, but that concept of acceptance of, all right, if this has happened, I really wish it was different. Kat, the final chapter in this, in the book, probably sums it up most beautifully when she says, you know, Kat is a mother of a beautiful little boy called Noah, who was born with a terminal illness and essentially told that he may not live a few, you know, it might be a few months, probably won't be more than a few years. He's now 12. He's still with us. He's gorgeous. And she says that in the beginning, they sat there and they just felt, this is wrong. This is so unjust. Why has it happened to us? This is so unfair. Our beautiful baby boy, it shouldn't be like this. And then she realized that she's using all of this energy on something she can't change. So she had to switch her thinking to go, well, we need to honor our son. We need to honor the life that he does have, however long that may be. What can we do to celebrate him, to make sure that we make the most of every day? I mean, talk about finding silver linings. And she's remarkable in just saying it was such a mindset thing. It was almost a stage of acceptance and then going, all right, well, it is what it is. What do we do now? And there's a few, you know, there's quite a few people that touch on that in very different ways, but essentially the same concept of having to accept what's happened. And all right, what do we do now? What do we, you know, what do we have? Not necessarily focusing on what we don't have. What do we have? And what can we do about it?
And again, these lessons that all of us can apply in our lives. And also too, you write in the book, Mel, at the start about, you know, COVID, that time of COVID was such a time of reassessment for all of us about what we wanted from life, what mattered, what didn't matter. And so for you, what did you discover through, I suppose, writing this book, sharing these stories, and also during that time, what was it that you sort of a different understanding about yourself, perhaps, or?
I think more than anything, it just reminded me I love doing what I do. I love storytelling, and I hope we never ever forget the power of connection. It's exactly what we're doing here tonight on Instagram. Thank you, Booktopia, for organising this. It's exactly what we do when we share stories when you ring your best girlfriend and you've had a shocking day and you just want to vent. It's what we do in, you know, on social media. It's from reading books. We need to connect as people. And I think particularly in the beginning of COVID, when we were all in lockdown and suddenly we found any way we could, you know, suddenly we're Zooming. I mean, I've never, you know, never Zoomed in my life. And suddenly we're doing everything we could to just stay close to one another. And I think, if anything, that time and writing this book reminded me how powerful and essential that is. It's what we've done since the beginning of time. When we've sat around campfires, we share stories, and that's what we do as human beings. So I think it reminded me of the power and the importance of doing that.
And storytelling, as you say, to me, it's the stuff of life. It's it is what connects us. It's what helps you feel understood, less alone, challenged, entertained. It's how we, I think, make our way in the world. And that's what, again, I love about your book. And you mentioned Booktopia again. And I can see some questions coming. Well, actually, not so much questions, more statements. People saying they love you, Mel, and that they're thinking about the book. But I'm saying, don't even think about it. Buy the book. And they can order it on booktopia.com.au, either for yourself or for a beautiful Christmas gift. It's a really lovely book for a lot of different people. You know, I think it's one of those books, Mel, that it doesn't matter what your age is, what stage you're at in your life, there is very much something in there for everyone.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's different voices. They're all very, very different. They've all been through very different challenges, from, you know, abduction and child slavery to alcoholism to mental health to grief to a life-changing accident. You know, they're all very, very different. But I think essentially the wisdom that comes out of everybody is quite similar. And I don't know, I think it's just that time, isn't it? I love going to the movies and walking out feeling the world's a better place. I love movies that just are uplifting and make you just so joyous that human beings are extraordinary. And I think we need a little bit of that now. It's kind of just, it's that time where, I don't know, there's been so much drab for too long that I want my heart to sing. So
yes, hence why I'm wearing sparkles for you, Mel.
But you always wear sparkles. You're so gorgeous. I love it. No, they're very pretty. Thank you. And even the backdrop, I'm most impressed. Mine looks quite dull compared to yours, so I'm going to have to have
some sparkly things here, and it's quite funny. Luckily, you haven't got a microphone as such set up here, because I know you've got your lovely border collie, but I've got Daphne, our little Maltese Shih Tzu, there, and Freddie, one of our pussycats, who keeps rustling around in all the sparkles. I'm like, just keep it down.
Well, Maggie's just asleep on the floor here at my feet, so I keep having to shush her and push her down here, but any chance to come and say hello, I'm sure she will. So
that's so lovely. Now, what also, Mel, I'm going to do is, I don't have a new book yet, but early next year, I did a photocopy of my...
I love it.
This is, I can't believe I actually have a cookbook. Every day.
Can you send me one? Yay, love it.
I will.
Can't wait.
I even cook you something in inverted commas, Mel.
Oh my gosh, please do. And you've got to wear your egg hat, your fried egg hat.
Oh, I will. Definitely at a jaunty angle for you.
All right. I probably need to dress up. I feel like I need to lift my game when we do that. All right, leave it with me. I'll try to cook up, pardon the pun, in the meantime. And and that'd be fun. Okay. You're on.
Please, that we have to do that, because people can also, they can pre-order this via Booktopia. Doesn't come out to the end of January. So it's a wonderful New Year present for people.
And it'll be here in no time.
As a proud crap housewife, there is recipes in there, Mel, that are so easy. There's packets, there's jars, there's all sorts of
That's
shortcuts.
My kind of cooking. Tonight was a pre-made lasagna from Woolies that just went in the oven. Fantastic. You know, like someone else has slaved over that all day, and I really appreciate it, and I respect them, and I enjoy it. Thank you.
And we all need a shortcut. We all need to take the pressure off. And the one thing, or not just the one thing, there's a couple of things I'm very excited about. There's even a taco in there, because I do love a taco. There's a cat cake. So being a crazy cat lady, I did want a cake that looked like a cat. So there's a
Okay.
fantastic pink cat cake in there.
Wow.
So
Is there
yeah.
a dog cake or just a cat cake?
No, I just went for the cat cake.
Right.
Maybe.
Well, maybe next edition you could do a dog cake for the dog owners. Yeah, I feel like I need to. I wonder if I can just. I'm going to give away all the secrets here, but try to angle it down. And can you see her?
Oh,
Yeah.
so sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, and
They're normally that quiet. Don't you love it when they do finally settle? Sorry, now I've got to put the phone back in the little crate.
oh yes.
When they are finally quiet for 5 minutes, it's like, woohoo. Oh, look at that. Now, look what I've done. I've totally mucked up the whole system here.
Oh no,
Yeah, that
looks
work in
great.
television.
And Mel, tell me, so that your lovely doggy, that wasn't a COVID dog, was it?
That was a COVID puppy.
Oh, it was a
Yeah.
COVID doggy. Okay.
So I don't know which of us has more separation anxiety, her or me, but we're a little attached. So yeah, it looked good and bad. I'm not very good at leaving her, and she's not very good when I leave. So anyway, we're a little joined. So I think you're just gonna have to get used to me bringing my dog everywhere.
Oh, but you've got to do that because you've obviously been touring around with the book, traveling a lot.
Yes.
How has that been?
So crooked, look at me. Oh, it's been fun. I felt really rock star. It's been fabulous. It's been lovely talking to people about it. And we've really found everywhere we went felt quite different. We began the tour in Lismore, which was, I think, essential. Lismore needs our hugs right now. Lismore needs our love and support financially, but emotionally. I think they need to know that they're not forgotten. Because as you know, the media can often whoosh into town and cover a story and then whoosh out just as quickly. So it was really lovely beginning there, but it was pretty tough. You know, people are still feeling a lot of things. So we began there, we shared some of these stories, and then we did Victoria and South Australia and Queensland. It's just been lovely connecting with people, talking to people, different questions at each one, different touch points, people taking very different things from the book and finding different voices in it have helped them. So that was really lovely, you know, to have one of our beautiful booksellers, and we're in Victoria, came up to me at the end, and she'd just lost her father, and she'd been reading Kat's story, and she said how much comfort it gave her, and Kat's wisdom had really, really helped her. So I think at that point in time, I thought my job is done. I'm so proud that I could be the messenger of these stories. I'm just the conduit. I just tell them. But I did that. I could do that. And so, yeah, that was really precious.
But never underestimate. You say, oh, I just sort of shared them. But what you do, Mel, is that you have an amazing capacity to connect with people, and people trust you, and they feel that they are able to open up in a way that perhaps they wouldn't do with someone else. So and that makes it even more precious, doesn't it? Don't you think that adds to the responsibility? You know, right back at your sister, you're the same. But I think that's what makes it even. I get more anxious about telling the stories properly than if you're covering an event. If you know you're out there and you're covering something unfolding, that's quite different than if you're telling somebody's story, because that's their life, their heart, their soul. So I really, I knew I had to get it right. They all read their chapters before we went to print, because I needed to ensure that everybody was really happy with everything that was written. I would never have put these stories out without their approval, because they're deeply personal, and you know, some of them are quite tough to read, and they were clearly tough to tell. So yeah, I think there's just that sense of that duty of care to all of the subjects in the book. But yeah, I think, you know, you're the same. We feel I feel privileged every time somebody trusts me to tell their story, and that's probably the thing I hold most dear to my heart. And you're so right. And as you say, it is a privilege to be able to talk with someone about their life and have a conversation that we don't really have with anyone else necessarily, like with a loved one or a family member. Yes, there's a closeness, but there's not really that sort of really sitting down and covering so much. It's different. So it is, I think, an enormous privilege to be able to meet with someone and then talk with them in such an intimate way.
And sometimes I've done interviews where people have been through something, and they find it quite cathartic to talk to a journalist or someone they don't necessarily, you know, it's not a family member or a really close friend. And the other thing I've found is that I've done a couple of interviews where people have had something happen to them, and their thinking is, I don't want to keep repeating this story. I don't want to tell it over and over every time I see somebody. So if I do it once, I can say to them, if anyone ever asks, they can say, oh, I did an interview with, you know, Mel on Sunday night. Go have a look. It's on YouTube. And I think that's such a powerful way to go, all right, this is my line in the sand. I'm not going to keep, this is not going to define me forever. I'm not going to keep talking about it every time I encounter somebody. Let's just do it once and then get on with what comes next. And yeah, I think that if that can help someone, then hey, how remarkable is that?
And you're right too. It's that sense of not wanting to be defined by something that is perhaps the worst thing to happen in your life, that doesn't then have to define everything about you. And obviously it's going to impact and change you, but it doesn't have to be all of you, that there is a way through. And again, that is what I think is so beautiful, Mel, about this book, is that these remarkable people that you've spoken to have found a way through the most terrible times, and you just think, oh, how have you done this? But they have, and yeah, and so it's a really beautiful book.
It was a reminder for me of perspective as well. I think you know, there's that sense of reminding me that, you know, we all have bad days, don't get me wrong, but sometimes, I don't know, I just need a little reminder that I'm okay. What I'm going through is actually okay. And I think that interviewing these people and talking to them definitely was a moment of perspective, of reminding me to keep that in check.
And also, I suppose, though, the flip side that's important, I think, for people to know who are perhaps listening, that even though you might think, oh, that's just terrible what that person's gone through, and it's far worse than what I'm going through, that everyone needs to be able to ask for help if they are struggling, that there's no shame in getting help, in saying, I'm not coping. I in fact think asking for help is one of the bravest things that anyone can do. So,
and also
you never ever want
people, and asking them. Two of the people in this book, Julie, who was addicted to alcohol, I'd known for many years, and I had no idea. And then Aurelio is another one in here who was suffering from mental health and major anxiety. And I had no idea either. And I think it's one of those moments of you think you know somebody, or Tonya talks about it, you know, sitting there on that park bench and people have got no idea what she's going through and she doesn't know what they are. So I think it's just a really important reminder to all of us. We don't have any idea really what the person in the car next to us who's having road rage, or somebody who's, you know, maybe doing something you think, why would you do that or say that? But we really don't know what's going on. So yeah, I kind of think it's important to remember that.
Yes, and that everyone is going through something. I don't know if you saw me, Mel, looking up at my phone frantically then. I don't know how to silence my phone, and Petey's on his way home from work and he's ringing. So if I do that again, it means he's going, why isn't she answering?
If you want to answer, we can all say hi. We can all have a quick chat. That's okay. Give him my love.
I will, because he adores you too. Now we're going to wrap, I think, in about 5 minutes or so. So we'd love some questions. Rob's got a question here, Mel, wondering about the title, and he's mentioned, you know, where's the title come from? Is it sort of a take on Andy Warhol's sort of 15 minutes of fame?
No, Rob, I can answer that question. Nothing to do with Andy Warhol. So the final story in the book is told by Kat, who is the mum of Noah, a little boy born with terminal illness, mitochondrial disease he has. And Noah had a number of strokes when he was very young. He's lost his eyesight in one eye. He feeds through a tube. He's in a wheelchair. You know, he's got a lot of pretty tough health complications. And he's a 12-year-old boy that has to go to hospital pretty regularly. He's got to have blood tests. He's got to see doctors, all of those things. And I was trying to see if I had, I'm just reaching down on the floor in my notes. He wrote me a letter so that I could explain it beautifully. And just give me 1 second. I'm going to read this to you. I hope you've got a tissue, or more importantly, I hope I've got a tissue, because I don't want to read it. So Noah says to me, It started when I was going through a lot of things at hospital all the time because I have mitochondrial disease. Sometimes things just felt too big to be able to get through. But when I talked to Mum, I realised I didn't need to be brave for a whole week or a whole day or even a whole hour. Sometimes I only needed to be brave for 15 seconds and then it was done. So on the days that things were really big and really hard, I was brave 15 seconds at a time. And when that was done, I would choose another 15 seconds. It made it feel easier and more possible to take it one moment at a time. Life can be big and hard and overwhelming. And on those days, you can just choose 15 seconds of brave, like me. So I named the book in Noah's honour because he's extraordinary and he's beautiful. He came to one of our events in Victoria last week. He's there and he's there in his wheelchair. I wish I could share a photo with you. On one side of the room, and I've got a table and I'm signing books, and he's signing the books on the other side of the room using the little tray on the front of his wheelchair, and was very proud to brag to me at the end that his line was way longer than mine. But yeah, he was working the crowd and charming the ladies. He's gorgeous. And I think to hear it, you know, from the mouths of babes, if we can hear that from a little boy who is going through tougher things than I can even imagine, let alone go through, then yeah. Took it from Noah.
Oh,
for the question.
That's so beautiful. Oh, that's so beautiful, Mel. And you saying that, you know, that he was there at one of the events, and that connection that you maintain with people. There's a message here from Tonya's. She says here, Mel is a big part of my mum's, in brackets, Tonya's happiness now. The compassion and love that Mel shows her during this whole process has just been amazing. So that's come through, which is just lovely. And someone said here, will the book come in time for Christmas? Yes, it will if you order it through Booktopia. Now, what about this, Mel? Who in my family is this book a perfect Christmas gift for?
Oh, gosh. I think it's for somebody who probably needs a little bit of encouragement, maybe a bit of inspiration. For anyone, I think, that is probably had a few challenges and feels a little alone or feels that life is tough. Yeah, I think they're beautiful words in there from incredible people that I think give us all a bit of hope. So anyone that could do with that.
And Fiona here, there's a message from Fiona. Hey, Mel, what was your favourite part of writing the book?
Oh, gosh. Having that lovely feeling when it all came together really naturally. It just felt like it was the right time, the right place. My stories all just beautifully dovetailed into one another because they all had so many different parts but so many common threads. And then of course I had a different name while I was writing it, and then one day, and I'm writing Noah's story, and I just went, oh my gosh, that's what I've got to call it. It's got to be called 15 Seconds of Brave. I don't know, it feels a bit naff to say, but it just felt like it all came together, and I had a moment going, this is really precious. I feel like it's actually important, and I'm so grateful that I got to share these stories. So probably when it all wrapped up and just felt really meaningful. I don't know if that really answers that question, but you know what I mean.
Oh, you've answered it just beautifully, Mel. Now, I think that's a beautiful place to end our conversation. I have so enjoyed.
So fun to catch up.
I know.
Can we do this again when yours comes out, and I'll get dressed up and you can make me something for dinner? And yeah, Petey can join us if he's on his way home from work or he's home in time. We can time it around his hours.
I think that's deal banana peel. I would love that. So Mel, thank you again. And just for everyone who's listening, remember, head to booktopiabooks.com.au to order this really beautiful book that Mel has done. There is very much something in there for everyone. And I've loved reading it, Mel. And you're just such a special soul, and so much love to you. And I will see you soon.
Much love to you. Thank you to Booktopia for your ongoing support, and thank you for being my go-to for all my book orders. But yeah, and so nice to catch up and chat to you. So happy Christmas, everyone. It's around the corner.
Exactly. Happy Chrissy, and the book is a great Christmas present.